All right, so this is Startup Grind. It's a program run by The Conductor. Is anyone new to Startup Grind and/or The Conductor? Woo! Awesome. Yay, thank you guys so much for coming. So The Conductor is a partnership with Startup Junkie and the University of Central Arkansas. Everything we do is completely free. We do free consulting. Jeff Sanders is our business partner, and he does the majority of our one-on-one consulting. We do lots of programs and events. Mo in the back is on our team, and he's a huge help with that as well. So this is a huge team effort. So Startup Grind is something we do every single month where we bring an entrepreneur or an influencer from the community to come share their story. So Daniel Tyler has been on my list for this for a long, long time. I'm so excited for you guys to hear his story. So the format, 45-ish minute Q&A between Daniel and me, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys to ask questions. So I encourage you to take pictures of the chat, tweet about what you're hearing, post on Facebook, and then write down whatever questions you want to ask at the end, and I encourage you to do that. And the point of this is to learn from Daniel and think about what you can emulate in your own life. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This is also a partnership with Google for Entrepreneurs. So Startup Grind is actually an international program, happens in over 200 cities around the world. And so we're really excited to have the local Conway chapter here. So Daniel is the founder of Deliver Hope. He's a good friend of mine and The Conductor. We're going to go ahead and get started. So Daniel, and for those of you who have been here, we normally start this with a kind of general, just tell us about yourself. And well, your story is well known because it's part of your mission, but I do want to talk about your story. So can you just tell us start with your upbringing though. So talk about growing up and what that was like for you.
Yeah, so I, unlike a lot of people who I think would show up here, I grew up right here in Conway. Went to Conway High School, graduated from Conway High School barely. And I grew up in a home that was a little different than most people, I think. I grew up in a home with crystal meth addicts as parents. And so grew up in a really broken home environment. My parents there was a lot of abuse, a lot of pain, a lot of frustration in the way that life was supposed to look like for us. And so because of that upbringing, because of the choices that we made, my parents made, I jokingly say that we moved every year because my parents wouldn't pay rent, and so we'd move to one apartment to another apartment to another apartment. We'd get evicted from one place to another place and to another place, and finally, just really hard time growing up here in Conway. And I love Conway a lot, but I also know that Conway I'll be carefully to say this, that Conway has an elitist mentality in certain circles. And so I had a tough time growing up in that home environment, but then also trying to figure out how to do life successfully in Conway through that brokenness. And so because of my upbringing, the choices that I made when I was junior high and high school allowed me to serve some time in our Faulkner County Juvenile Detention Center. I was on juvenile probation here in town, and was just in and out of trouble for a long time.
So, and we're going to get back to this too later in the talk, but can you talk about part of Deliver Hope's mission is serving at-risk youth, but I think you've also told me that you like to think about it as youth in at-risk situations.
Yeah.
But either way, what does that mean, and how can you relate to that?
Yeah. So when we started Deliver Hope, the idea was that what we said is we wanted to deliver hope to at-risk young people, no matter what circumstance they found themselves in. And so the thing for us though was, I was having conversations with some of our youth that we serve in our community, and I realized that youth don't want to be considered at risk. They don't want to be called that. They don't. What does that even mean? Everybody's at risk. You're at risk for making stupid choices. All of us are at risk for whatever it is that is going on in our lives. And so, so we started saying, hey, what if we delivered hope to teenagers in at-risk situations or high-risk situations? And so what we do with Deliver Hope is we work with students who are in at-risk or high-risk situations. That could be drug addiction, broken home environments, kids who are incarcerated. I have the privilege of serving as one of the chaplains for the Sheriff's Department. So we work with for the kids that are while they're incarcerated in the jail. So we work with the kids while they're in jail, and then when they get out of jail, the idea is that we connect each kid to somebody in the community who could help them make choices that would put them on the right path. And that could be anything from as simple as just encouraging words to intensive mentoring. And so that's the idea kind of behind what Deliver Hope is about.
So relating that back to your life, did you feel at risk or in an at-risk situation? And what is that like? Like for people today to try to understand what that is like, what does that mean?
I didn't know. I had never heard the term at risk. What I knew was that I hated the way that my upbringing was. I hated the way that I felt when I woke up in the morning and when I went to school. I didn't like who I was or where I was. What I was supposed to be doing. I didn't like the way that other people looked at me. So I knew that. I didn't know what at risk meant, but what I did know is that my dad was abusive. My mom was struggling with drug addiction. I'd show up at school trying to figure out a way to make it and just couldn't do it. I had terrible grades. And obviously a lot of it was my own choices and my attitude towards all that stuff. But I didn't want to. I tell people all the time, like a lot of people who you would deem as at risk, they don't desire to live like that. They just don't have another option for it. And so there's been no other like positive environment for them to find themselves in. And so we do this as an example. We in our mentor trainings, we pass out this piece of paper to all of our people who want to serve as mentors, and it's got a bunch of numbers in it, just a bunch of random order, and we have them find in that we find number 1, find number 2, find number 3, find number 4, and you just go in order until I tell you to stop. Right? And it's usually about 30 seconds, and most people get to 7 or 8, in that 30 seconds. And then I pass around another piece of paper, and in that same piece of paper, it's the same numbers in the exact same order, except there's boxes around them. And then I give an example. I say, hey, if you'll go counterclockwise to the next box, you'll find the next number. And let's see how far you can go in 30 seconds. And our mentors will go not just 7, but 8, 9, 10, 11, up to 30, 40 numbers. And you say, why was that so easy? Well, you gave me some instruction. Exactly. And so many of the kids that we work with, and the same way that I grew up in, is like we have this expectation for high risk or kids in at-risk situations to perform in the way that like kids who grew up in great homes. We expect them to perform, but there's no way for them to perform because they don't know what that next step is. And so what Deliver Hope has been about is trying to figure out, hey, what does that next step look like to be successful in life? I mean, it could be anything. And so for me, when it was growing up, I remember sitting in jail as a juvenile and crying. I was sitting on the bed of the jail thinking, okay, for real, I'm going to change. I don't want to be like this anymore. I'm not coming back to jail again. I'm going to do whatever it takes to not come back to jail. And I get out of jail, and 2 weeks later, I get arrested again. You're like, how did this happen? Why am I in the exact same spot that I was before? And so that's what we try to figure out with the students that we work with is, hey, why are you here? And what steps do you need to take to be successful in your life?
So can you take us to now, so you painted the picture of what it was like at that point in your life. Talk about now kind of the end of your high school career, and then what did you do after high school?
Yeah, so for what it's worth, I'll preface this before I get started because this is really important for this conversation. My goal in telling you this part of my story is not to convince you to believe like me or think like I think, but in order for you to fully understand my heart and why I am where I am, you have to hear this part of my story. And if I'm being super honest, there was a girl who asked me on a date, and she was super hot, okay? And I had been trying to ask her out for several months, and she was not interested. And so she finally approached me in the hallway and asked me to go on a date with her. And I was excited about it, and what that meant for me was she took me to church. And I didn't want to do the church thing. But I went to church that night and my life changed. And for those of you who know what that means, know what that means. For those of you who don't, you can ask the people who do. But I realized in that moment that there was purpose to my life. That I didn't have to be a son of a drug addict. That I could be somebody greater. There was purpose to the things that I pursued. There was purpose to all those things. And so in high school, broke in frustrated, stressed out, scared. And when my faith kind of became something that I held on to, it changed the way that I viewed things. And so I went back to school, and I thought, I can make better grades. And so I worked the end of my senior year trying to make better grades, you know. And I thought, I don't have to grow up, you know, I don't have to be a drug addict. So I can get out of, I don't have to go partying and doing all these things. I can go and do whatever it is that I want to do. And so for me, I pursued ministry. I went to college for a couple of years and went to a school to pursue like student ministry. I wanted to talk to kids about that faith that I had, and so I pursued that for a couple of years. And but I honestly, unlike a lot of people that I think we talked to, I did not succeed in college. I struggled in college. I didn't have any kind of support system. So when I go to college, you know, I was telling Kim the other day when we were talking, it's like, put this into perspective. When you go to college, and where do you stay when Thanksgiving comes around? Or where do you stay when Christmas comes around? You know where I stayed? I found somebody's couch to crash on. You know, and so like college didn't work for me. I couldn't figure out a way to like succeed in it because I had no support. And so I dropped out of college and started painting houses for a living. My story goes a little bit deeper, but my parents, like I said, were drug addicts. I was struggling with my home environment. So when I was 18, went to college and then became homeless when I left college. So I was right here in Conway, you know, so put this in perspective. Right here in Conway, I used to sleep at the fairgrounds when they used to be where the Boys and Girls Club is. If you've been in Conway any longer than the last, I don't know, probably 10 years, you would know that the Boys and Girls Club wasn't there, and there was a big fairgrounds to break into the buildings over there so I could sleep at night. And there was a local painter in town who believed in me for whatever reason. He went to Conway First Church of the Nazarene and heard that I was living there, and he showed up one night and said, "Hey, what if you moved into my house? What if I gave you a place to stay?" And and so it was funny. When I tell the story, it's my favorite story to tell. But his name was Jamie White. No one knows him. He doesn't even live here in town anymore. But so he lets this guy, random guy that I had met him a couple times, and lets me move into his house. Him and his wife. It's just him and his wife. And so I move in. I'm just a jacked up kid trying to figure out how to live life. And he walks in my room at 6 o'clock the next morning. And he goes, "Rise and shine and give God the glory, glory." I was like, "Who in the world are you? You know, get out of my room." You know. And he said, "Hey man, if you're going to live in my house and you don't have a job, you're going to have to figure out how to work. So you're going to work with me today." And he was a local painter, and he taught me how to prep to paint. I was caulking and puttying for months, and then he taught me how to use a paintbrush, taught me how to use a paint roller, taught me how to use a sprayer, and made a decent living doing that until I went on to the next part of my career.
So, and this is just one time I was talking about painting my house, and you mentioned that you had painted houses before. Now it's putting it so in perspective. What'd you do after that? So
I was at that time I got in a relationship with long story. I got into a relationship with this girl that did not work out. It was not a good thing, right? And so we broke up, and I had no clue what to do. But let me backtrack for just a second and tell you that because of my faith, and I mean this dearly. It's always hard to have this conversation with a group this size when I don't know people, but because of my faith, it really affected everything in me. It changed like my thought process. It changed the way that I looked at people, all those things, and it changed the way that I viewed my mom. At this point, my parents had divorced, and my dad was an addict, my mom was an addict, but I had this, all of a sudden I started having this passion for my mom, and I wanted to see my mom free, you know, and so I had the opportunity of walking through some of that with my mom and watching my mom get clean and watching my mom go back to school and watching my mom get her master's degree and walking across that stage. And she had this opportunity to get her doctorate, and she had a class that she would have had to have taken, but the class that she would have gotten her doctorate in was in Wisconsin. And so she had moved up to Wisconsin to work on her doctorate. So think about this. I grew up in a home. My mom had been an addict for the majority of my life. She's living in Wisconsin working on her doctorate and free from drugs. I'm painting houses down here in Arkansas, trying to figure out how to do life, and the guy who, so I'm just like struggling, and I was dating this girl that, for what it's worth, it just didn't work out, and when she broke up with me, I was like, I don't know what to do, Conway sucks. No offense. I love Conway now, and at the time, it's like when everything falls apart, you're like, hey, I'm getting out of Conway, And so I did. I got out of Conway. My mom was up in Wisconsin, so I thought, hey, I'm gonna go up there. I'm gonna spend the summer with her and kind of recalibrate what life looks like and try to figure out what my next steps are. So I moved up to Wisconsin and spent some time with my mom.
And tell us about Wisconsin.
So Wisconsin was awesome. It's cold as heck, but it was awesome. People always talk about how hell is going to be hot. I don't know. Wisconsin's one of those places that you smile and your teeth hurt. It's like, it's cold. But it was good for me. I moved up there, and hopefully this will be encouraging to some of you. I had no clue what I was doing, guys. Like, I was making crap up as I went, for the majority of still do. But I went up to my mom. So this girl broke up with me. My mom was living in Wisconsin, pursuing her doctorate, and she calls me and says, hey, why don't you come up here with me and get away from Arkansas for a little bit and kind of refocus your life? And I thought, that's a great idea. So I went up there and hung out with her. She started attending this church, this local church that was up there, and they were adding a whole like youth and children's wing onto their building. And they had finished building the building, but they needed somebody to paint it. Well, I was a painter, so I was like, hey, I'm up here for the summer. I can paint the church. It's like don't worry about paying somebody that kind of money. Just pay me, minimum wage, and I can do it, and they give me something to do, and still have some fun and whatever. And so while I was doing that, I painted that church building, and the pastor who was the pastor of the church, started just spending time with me. Like, he would pull up a chair in the hallway, and while I was painting, I always wondered why he didn't pick up the roller. But anyways, he would. So he would just sit there in the chair while I'm painting, and we would just talk. I'd tell him my story and tell him my heart and the things that I wanted to do in the community and like my dreams for what life looked like for me long term, And so I did that until we finished I finished, he said, but I finished. And at the end of it, he said, hey, what if we created an internship? I feel like you have a heart for ministry, so what if we did an internship? And you just kind of came on staff at the church. I have no clue what that looks like, but come on. I'm like, well, sure, why not? And so I did. And 6 weeks into my internship, at this church, the guy who I was supposed to be interning under, he was a youth pastor, resigned. And so they were like, hey man, you need to fill in until we find a new youth pastor. I don't think you understand what you just asked, because 6 weeks ago I was, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And for me, it was just one of those things that just worked. It was a really fun season.
Can you talk about that just a little bit, because I'll ask you the question. So was that a turning point in your life? And talk about that pastor. Like, what did that mean that he asked you to do that? Yeah, so
here's the reality. I had come from a broken home. I was making, for those of you who are, I try to word this right. For those of you who understand my faith, these faith conversations if this makes sense to you, let me just preface it like this. For me, my faith became real for me, but my character didn't match my faith. Does that make sense? So I believed all the things that I was saying, but man, my character did not match what I was trying to live up to. And so I was making terrible decisions. The way that I was thinking, the way that I was living, I didn't know how to do all this stuff. And my pastor believed in me for some reason. And I remember asking him one time, like, why are you, I was telling Kim the other day, there is no way I would have hired me. Even now. Like, now, I know who I was and I know what's happened in my life. I would not have hired me. That was not a smart idea. But he hired, and he invested in me and spent time. This is a man who was in his 60s, who looked at me and he said, hey, I believe in you, and there's purpose for your life, and all the pain that you experienced when you were young, there's purpose for it, and I'm going to invest in it. And I'm going to make sure that you succeed in your life. And that's what he said to me. And it made me work for it. Because no one's ever said that to me. I had never heard like, hey dude, you got it. And I'm going to invest in it. And so when he started saying that kind of stuff to me, I wanted to live up to the expectations that he put for me. And so he said stuff to me like, I'll never forget my first like real staff meeting. And so you take this from church or to business world or whatever. I was sitting in a staff meeting one time, and you know how young people are. Some of you young people understand this. You know how we always have to say what we think. I mean, it's just like, I'm just going to put my word out here because my word makes sense. And all the people who are over the age of 40 have no clue what they're talking about, you know? And so I'm going to put my stuff out here. So I did that. You know, I was one of those guys. So I put my stuff out there, and his name was Galen. And I love Galen. That's even today he's one of my top supporters. But Galen said, hey, all right, well, staff meeting's over. Why don't you all leave? Hey, Daniel, why don't you stand here for a second? And I was like, all right, cool. You know, I was like, what's up? You know, I said a couple good things. You know, I know he's going to, be like, hey, man, that was great content. He said, hey, I got an idea for you. I want you to keep your mouth shut unless I directly ask you a question. And we laugh at that now. It changed my life. It changed. No one's ever told me that. And he said, Daniel, you're going to be used. There are gifts that you've been given, and you're going to make a huge difference in the world. But you have got to learn to listen to the people that are around you, and it'll change your world. And it changed my life. That's when mentorship, the whole idea of becoming a mentor, like shaped in my life. And I realized if I could just listen to people for a second, if I would shut my mouth for just a moment and let the people who believe in me tell me what I could do, it will change me. And it'll change the outcome of what life will look like for me. And it did.
So at this point, it sounds like you're loving what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You're in Wisconsin. How did you then get us from there to Deliver Hope?
Yeah, so it's a long story, but I'll give you the very short version because we don't have a ton of time. But so I was having a blast. Student ministry was fun. I had all the, it's really hard to explain this, but all the success measures that I had put in place for what it would look like to be successful in American church stuff was happening for me. And I liked all that, and it was fun. So you got to put it in perspective. Grew up in this broken home. All these pieces came into place. I got my job. I've got the career that I was desiring. And then I met my wife, and had a family. And when you grow up in a broken home like me, and you get married for the only time, you have this moment where you think, oh shoot, like I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a husband. I got no clue. Never seen it done right, And so, I found men in our church community who I went and asked, "Hey, teach me, man. How are you still married? I mean, you've been married for, I remember 15 years was a long time. I'm like, dude, you've been married for 15 years? Tell me, how did you do it? And they would invest things into me. I thought, okay, I think maybe I can do those things. Maybe I could stay married for 15 years, Maybe I could do that, And then, and so I got married to my wife, and she's here with me. She's in the back. She's like one of those people who likes to hang behind. But anyways, you get married and have a blast, and then we had kids, for the first time, and the same deal. I found out I was having a son, and I thought, oh shoot, this is a game changer for me. I have the potential in this moment to change the generation of the Tyler family forever. How do I do it? I don't know. And so I found mentors. I found men who were good dads, who had raised good kids, and who were living life in a way that I would like to emulate. And I said, hey man, will you teach me what it looks like to be a good dad? I don't know how. And they did. And it changed me. And so had a blast. We started, got married, started a family. Life felt like it was great. Ministry was great. I was having a blast. Everything was here's the way that I was telling Kim is everything was comfortable, was getting a salary. We had bought our first, we had bought a house, all these things were great. But in that same process, I had a tragedy that hit our family. My mom, who I told you got clean from drugs, and I watched her get her master's degree, and then I was watching her get her doctorate, was murdered. And it threw me for a loop. And for what it's worth. I don't want to be the first person who's ever cried at Startup Grind, so I'm not going to.
That's all right.
Yeah, but it rocked my life, and so all the things that I had believed in my faith had to like either come to fruition or not, and it rocked it changed all of my life, and so I went through this process of trying to figure out what it meant to live out this Christian faith that I said I believed. But didn't really know how to live out in this situation, and so I'll give you the really short version. But my mom had a huge issue with after she got clean with dating stupid guys. Drives me nuts, when I talk to girls and women who date guys over and over who are abusive, and every relationship is the same thing. It's the same cycle. And my mom and I, after she had gotten clean, we started having lunch at Subway in the basement of the hospital where she was working, and we shared a foot-long sub all the time. The same sub. I can tell you everything on it. It's Italian BMT. She liked the olives. I didn't. She split the sub, and sometimes they put the olives on my side. It wasn't a good thing. And so we would sit and share this sub, and we would talk about life and talk about faith and talk about jobs and talk about whatever. And this particular Monday, I watched my mom, cry and tell me that she didn't know what she was going to do. She was lonely and scared, and she was with this guy who was treating her really bad. And I told her, Mom, you don't have to be in a relationship with the guys like that. You can, there's purpose for your life. The same kind of things that you hear. You don't have to be like this. You can do this. Like, you can get out of this world and you can do the things that you're supposed to be doing, and you don't need a guy to make you feel fulfilled. Blah 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 blah. Right? All that stuff. And I'll never forget it. My mom slammed her hands on the table and she said, "I'm not going to be alone." And it was so scary to me. And so I walked her back to my office, or her office. And while I was walking her back to her office, I put my arm around her, and she said words to me that I'll hold on to until I go to the grave. But she said that was the first time that a real man's ever put his arm around me. And it was the last real conversation I had with my mom. So that same week, that Friday of that week, I got a phone call that my mom was in the hospital, that her boyfriend had beat her up, and she died. And it changed my world. But again, all that stuff that I've said that up until now that I've said that I believed, I had to figure out how to manage that. And so I was driving down the road one day, just processing all of it, and I saw him. His parents had bailed him out of jail. He was awaiting his trial, but his parents bailed him out until trial. And I saw him riding a bicycle down the road. So you think all you think, you're driving your truck, with a brush guard on the front of it, and the guy's riding a bicycle, Took your mom out, so I turned my car around and got it to go as fast as I get it to go before I got to him. And I wanted to hit him really bad, but I didn't. And it was a moment for me. Again, my faith kind of became the real thing for me, and I realized that I have to forgive him, or it'll kill me. And so that's what I worked on, So I called him a couple days later and asked him if he would meet up with me, and I'd like to talk to him, and he did. Showed up at the church where I was pastoring, rolled his bicycle up to the church, and I told him that I forgived him, and that I had to forgive him, and that I was working on forgiving him. And so I said some things like, "Hey, you should start coming to church with me," which was weird because he did, And for those of you who know this kind of stuff, church people don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff, And so he showed up at a church with me, and he sat in the back row. So it's like him and me and my wife, and nobody sat around us, It's like everybody's scared of him, And but I watched him accept that forgiveness, and the same faith that I have, I watched him accept as well, and changed my life. And so what that did for Deliver Hope, that's a long story, I understand, and there's a whole lot of stuff in between that we don't have time to get into, but I'll tell you what it did for me for Deliver Hope. Is I realized in that moment that the things that I believe in my faith were real, and that And so I've said from the very beginning of like pursuing Deliver Hope, I have these 3 terms that I use all the time. It's like, I want to live a life that's dedicated to inspiring people to dream beyond their circumstances, that they can excel despite whatever disadvantages they have, and they can reach their fullest potential, you know? And so I realized that in that man that day. I realized that he's going to go to prison, and yet he's still worth it. And so then I started thinking, well, what about the kids that are in jail? Or what about the guy who robs the person down the street? Or what about, like, those people are worth it too then. And so what if we could figure out a way to create resources and opportunities for young people who find themselves in the most dangerous circumstances, and we could figure out a resource to help them succeed. And that is when Deliver Hope kind of started being formed in my mind. And we had done an outreach event. This is like when it solidified. We had done an outreach event one night to some kids in our community, and a lot of kids showed up. It was one of those like moments where you're like, I'm successful, you know, like I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, you know. And I had a bunch of kids come, and I felt great about what I was doing. And a mom came up to me that night, and she said, you know, it's really great that you're ministering to all of those kids, but my daughter needs a class on purity. And I said, who are those kids? When you say those kids, which kids are you talking about? Are you talking about the black kids? Are you talking about the kids from the broken homes? Or are you talking about the kids from the trailer park? What kids are you talking about when you say those kids? Because those kids have a name too. And you should be teaching your daughter about purity, not me. And that's when Deliver Hope kind of became formed in my mind. I had this idea. I thought, what if we, again, take it for what it's worth. What if we as the church, or people who claim themselves as in this faith thing that I've talked about, what if we really live this stuff out and actually reach the people that we felt like we were called to reach? I think it would change the game for us. And so that's what we did.
So talk about the journey of so you're in Wisconsin, you formulate the idea of Deliver Hope, and how does that take shape, and how do you end up in Conway?
Yeah. Stupid stuff. I mean, it was just so dumb. I think back on it now, and I think Jeff Standards would have told me, you're an idiot. What are you doing? You know, I had this idea of starting a nonprofit for high-risk teen or kids in high-risk situations or at-risk situations, and I had no clue what it was going to look like. All I knew was that somebody had to say something. You know, somebody had to do something. And so we were student pastors. Andrew and I were student pastors in Wisconsin. I had gotten to a place where I felt like I'd done everything I could do in the current position that I was in. And I thought, okay, cool. Well, let's go start something. You know, whatever. I was young too, so it didn't really. It's like one of those things like, we'll see if it happens financially, and if it doesn't, I'll go find another job. You know, it was at that age, you know, my kids were young, I could do that. And so I moved down here because I was from here, and I knew, you know, like if you put it in perspective, I'm a chaplain for the juvenile detention center. So the kids that we serve, the beds that they sleep in were the same beds that I slept in when I was a teenager, right? So when I thought, hey, what if we moved back to Conway and started working with teenagers while they're in their darkest places? And if it doesn't work, cool, we'll figure it out, but let's just go, let's try it out. And so, it was really weird because I started doing a bunch of research, and I found out like there's legal stuff that you have to do. I didn't know. There's a thing called a 501c3, never heard of it. In order to get money, you had to have one of those. And then you had to like file certain IRS things that I didn't know how to do either. And so there's this great thing, I don't know if you guys have ever heard, it's called Google, and just Google and stuff, you know, I'm just making crap up as I go, you know, and filling out forms. IRS says, hey, you need this form, I'm like, cool, let's fill that one out. All right, let's fill that one out, you know, and we just filled out all these forms, and all of a sudden it worked. They gave us, you know, our 501c3, and they gave us our, you know, stuff. I've done like marketing. I got involved in like church marketing when I was in Wisconsin because our graphics sucked as a church, and so I started learning how to do graphic design and website design, and so I had already built a website and done some of that stuff, and thought I think we can do this, and then we moved. So we did all that while we were in Wisconsin, and then we moved down here to start Deliver Hope.
And what was Deliver Hope?
A dream in my head. We had said that we wanted what we said was we wanted to deliver hope to kids, to at-risk young people, no matter what circumstance they find themselves in. And so with that being said, the way that we said that was, I knew that there were at the time there were 36 beds in the juvenile detention center, boys and girls in Faulkner County. That's 36 beds. And I knew at the time every bed was full. And so I knew that that's 36 kids that that's the average size of a normal youth group. I think I could help some kids that are in jail. And so that's what I figured out. And for me, it's cool because my story kind of hits on this, but so my private attorney as a kid was the county attorney when I got back to Conway. So I got back to Conway, and the guy who was my private attorney was the county attorney. And he was the one that I needed to get in touch with in order to get involved into the local detention center. So I called him up. I'm like, hey man, you remember me? You know, like you kept me out of jail several times. You know, hey, I'm here to, I want to help some kids. And so, anyways, it was easy to start ministering to kids at the time. And so we started going into the jail and start working with kids while they were incarcerated. So there were 36 kids at the time when Deliver Hope very first started. We didn't know what else we were going to do besides work with the kids while they were in jail. So the jail told me that, hey, you've got 30 minutes with the males. That was what they told me. And so I was like, cool, I'll take the 30 minutes and I'll start working with the guys while they're in jail. And so I started telling the guys while they're in jail that Jesus loves them and there's purpose for life, blah, blah, blah. I mean, went on and on about all these things that I believe, and my faith, again, was the catalyst for that. Well, what happened was they stopped making bad choices in jail. Now, they weren't out of jail yet, but they stopped making the bad choices in jail. And so they stopped fighting as much, and they stopped, flushing soap down the toilet, and they stopped, doing these things. And so the sergeant says, hey, what if you came and started working with the girls? I was like, I don't know, I didn't have any help at the time, so I was like, whatever. So I started going in there and doing girls' chapel services and talking to the girls about the same things, and then they were changing. And then one night, this guy that I was talking to, he said to me, hey man, I hear everything that you're telling me, everything that you're saying sounds great. I want to change, but I got to go home. And when I go home, the stuff that you're telling me is not going to work at my house. So what now? And that is when Deliver Hope really became formed in my mind. That was when I realized we've got to do something else. There's got to be more than just talking to the kids in jail about my faith. And so for what it's worth, for those of you who understand this faith talk that I'm not trying to get you to believe like me, but for those of you who understand this whole faith conversation, let me just say this, that kids don't care about my faith if they're hungry. Right? Kids don't care about my faith if they're unsafe. They don't care. And so I started thinking, well, what's it going to take to create safety? And what's it going to take to create health and those type of things? And so that's when Deliver Hope really became more of an organization than just ministering to kids in jail.
So I want to follow up from an entrepreneurial perspective. Obviously, this was kind of seeing your dreams realized and is fulfilling work, but how did you fund it in the beginning? How did you know how to execute the growth plan? I mean, how did you know what to do there in the beginning when you're kind of scrappy and pulling everything together as a one-man show? Yeah,
everything was that way. I mean, it was just scrappy. I jokingly say this, but we really just made we just made it up as we went. First of all, the first thing I did was I found people in our community who had influence. So I got to Conway, started working with kids in the jail, and then I realized I got to find people who have influence. So my board chair is Lori Melton. You guys probably know Lori Melton. If you don't know her, you should. But Lori knew me when I was a teenager, and she didn't know the fullness of my story, but she knew me as a teenager, and so she was one of the first people I reached out to when I got back to Conway. And I thought, I've got to reach out to somebody who can get me connections in the community, and so I reached out I knew I needed to do that, but I didn't know much else after that. And Lori helped me get connections, and she opened some doors for me to meet some other people who could build relationships and that sort of stuff. But the whole how Deliver Hope turned, literally, Lori can attest to this. We were just making it up, And every time we felt some passion that we felt what I call God-given, I started like getting excited about something. I think we can do that too, you know, like, hey, let's make this happen, you know? And I had people tell me, Daniel, you're dreaming a little too far. And I'm like, hey man, this isn't too big for what God wants to do. So let's keep on dreaming. And so that's what we did. And so, you know, funding, well, we didn't do very well at the beginning. You know, I worked several part-time jobs, and I was talking to a guy right before here who's trying to start his own business. And I think the thing that I've learned with this stuff is, if you're looking for a handout, man, good luck. I really would love for that to happen for you. That'd be awesome. And if it does, write that story down because somebody needs to hear it. But it ain't happening. It doesn't happen. Handouts do not happen. I had to work. And so I worked a lot of hours for several different jobs. But I really believed that we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. What kind of solidified it for me, and this is a testament for those of you, again, who kind of have that same faith focus as I do, but my mom had passed away. And this is how cool, like, this is why I believe, have these certain faith beliefs that I do. But when my mom died, 6 weeks before my mom died, she decided that she thought she needed to take out a life insurance policy. Why? 6 weeks. I mean, she'd been a drug addict her whole life, and all of a sudden she decides, hey, I'm gonna take a life insurance policy 6 weeks before she passes away. So all of a sudden she dies, and there's life insurance money for me and my family. And so we use that money to start Deliver Hope. Well, so what do you do when you run out of money? You know, and just so you know, when you start an organization, like, people don't buy into it until you show results. Like, people don't just give to vision; they give to results. And so I knew that I was kind of in a struggle because I didn't know how to prove that our dream was going to work. I didn't know that was actually going to take place. And so when we started Deliver Hope, it was literally like, hey man, I hope that this works. Would you give to it? And people said no. And so we used our personal savings account to fund it. Well, when we ran out of money, it was like, okay, well, I guess we're done. I guess I missed out. I was telling Kim this story. Like, this is my favorite story, and I hope this will encourage for those of you who are entrepreneurs in this room. When you feel like God's given you something to pursue, I was pursuing this and ran out of money. And I was I'll never forget. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my wife and a couple friends of ours, and I was like, we're done. We don't have any more money. You know, I don't know what we're going to do. I guess I need to go get another job. I guess I must have missed something. We're not supposed to be doing this. And that night, somebody knocked on our door. The man that I knew from my past, and if you knew me, you would know that he should not have been knocking on my door. He knocked on my door and he said, hey man, when I found out you were coming to Conway to start Deliver Hope, he said, God spoke to my heart and told me to give you a certain amount of money. But what God told me to give you, I couldn't afford. I'm being real about that. And I was like, okay. He said, I went and asked my boss for my bonus early. Here's $5,000. And immediately just start crying. You know, crying, didn't know how I was going to, And he said, that's not the end of the story. When I went and asked my boss for my bonus early, she wanted to know why. So I told her your story and why you were here. She matched it. Here's another $5,000. And she didn't even believe like me. So I put that in perspective to say that, like, when you know that you've got a dream that has benefits to the people around you. You know, Bunny Adcock was here last week or last month, and he said something. He said, I realized that success for me was when I fought for something that didn't just benefit me, it benefited the community. You will always be taken care of when you fight for the community, period. It always happens. It's not always in the same way that we think that it is, but it always happens. And so you fight for yourself, then I say, hey, good luck. I really hope you make it. That'd be great for you. But when you fight for the community, it comes for you and it happens. So anyways, that's kind of how when we were getting started, a lot of it was that we were just making it up as we went. And so we found guys in the community who believed in us. We found people like Lori Melton who opened doors and who believed in the vision. And then we started getting in touch with guys like Jeff Standards and saying, hey man, this is the heart that we could do. And so we found mentors who would say, hey, if you're going to do this, this is what it's going to take to pull this off. This is how you're going to be able, all that. And so then I had to learn like the actual, now I know what a 501c3 is. Now I know how to fill one out, this is what insurance is. I understand that stuff now. I did not understand that when I first started, so.
So talk a little bit about people and how, you've mentioned a number of people tonight, but also I think or when you tell your story, it seems like there are a number of people who sort of made differences in your lives. I mean, even the painter, and the pastor, and you know, talk about how those people and relationships in general have impacted your life.
Yeah, I mean, I would be dead. You know, I grew up in that home that was painful, and there was a man in, this will put it in perspective. There's a man in Conway. His name is George Baker. Most of y'all don't know him. If you do, he works for a security bank. He's just a normal loan officer. And George believed in me. That's it. He just believed in me. I remember one time I was raking his leaves in his yard. This just show you how simple this is, making an impact in somebody's life. I used to go outside in his yard and rake his leaves with him because I just wanted to spend time with him. I wasn't really looking for, he never paid me. I didn't even think about getting paid. I just wanted to spend time with him. So I would intentionally go and find time to spend time with George. And George looked at me one day. I remember I had lied to him about something. I used to lie all the time. I'd make up crazy stories. When I meet a girl, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got this car, you know, I had a wreck, you just make, because I didn't ever have a car, you know. And so I make up crazy stories, you know, but I had lied to George about something, and I was raking my leaves, or raking leaves with him one day, and he stopped me. He said, hey, Dan, I want to tell you something. Hey, I know you lied to me about whatever it was. And he said, I just want you to know that Daniel Tyler's good enough for me. Like, you don't ever have to be anything more. Daniel Tyler's good enough for me. It changed my life. You know, when you grow up where you feel like, man, I don't feel like I have any purpose, you know, there's no life, you know, and then somebody says something like that to you and you're just like, man, that's it for me, you know. You're right, I'm going to be, you know, and I'm going to prove, and I lived a life, like there were certain times, of course I did it for my faith, but there were times where I thought, I wonder what George would say. I wonder how George would encourage me. I wonder what, you know, and so when you talk about people, like I even think now, I mean, it's not even like people who are like, there's a guy in this room right now who has been a huge influence in my life just because he's patient, you know, and I'm not a super patient guy. And so there's times where I live, like in the decisions that I make, I think, I wonder what James would do. You know, I wonder what James would think if I responded this way. And I say that to say that the greatest things that you can do for yourself in any entrepreneur effort or any business effort is find people in your life to invest in you, and you invest your life into other people. That's it. That's all of this stuff. That's all this is. All your success is not yours. That's the greatest thing that we can know. You've had people to invest in you, and so have I. And so like we just lean into those things as we go. And so like, I mean, I could name hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in Conway and in Wisconsin and, you know, all over the place to say, these are the people who invested in me. And so I'll tell you the one thing that I was told by my pastor, Galen, who I told you guys about, who kind of told me I was an idiot and needed to keep my mouth shut. He told me after we had kind of started seeing some success in the world that I was in, he said, you know why you're going to be successful, Daniel? Because you're coachable. He said, no matter what you do, and I don't know if this is true yet or not, I'm hoping for this to be the case, but he said, no matter what you put your hands to, you're going to succeed because you always find people to invest in you. And I said that I hope that that's the case. And I will tell you that every bit of success that I've ever had, and I don't know how much success I would call what I've been able to be a part of, but I have found, I seek that stuff out. I annoy people. I call Jeff and put myself on his calendar, you know, and say, hey dude, I'm here. I need to talk. I need to learn how to process this. You know, I need to know how to talk to so-and-so, you know. I mean, it's what you do. It's the only way that we're going to be successful especially as young people, as entrepreneurs.
So I completely lost track of time. Before I open up to Q&A, can you just talk about, I mean, we didn't even really talk about the journey of Deliver Hope. So, I think that you can't separate your story from Deliver Hope either. But can you talk about just the trajectory of Deliver Hope? And, you know, I was really inspired, honestly, when you and I were talking the other day about you started in 2013 and you were sort of figuring it out into where you are today, not long after. So could you just sort of talk about the high points and the turning points? Yeah,
so we started in 2013. From 2013, 14, and 15, I'll be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of work that was being done. We were encouraged and we were excited, but I was discouraged most of the time. The majority of 2013, 14, 15, I was discouraged about what we were doing because I thought, we're not raising any money. We're not making an impact. I don't know what we're doing. We're just, I'm scared to death. I've got 3 kids at home. I don't know how to provide for my family. I feel like I'm doing something that I'm supposed to be doing, but there's no, I just don't know if this is going to work. And in 2000 and I guess it would have been the early part or the end of 2016, it just, for some reason, I think this is, it's just faithfulness, guys. It's like when you know that you're supposed to be doing something, you just fight for it, And I think the greatest thing that you can do is to know that it's like, or I think the thing that the world would love for you to do is to fail in your first part of the journey. And so I don't know. I just had people around me who kept telling me that I was worth it, that it was worth fighting for. And so I just kept fighting and we kept fighting and kept fighting. And finally at the end of 2016, we started seeing some small successes and we started hitting these deals where I was like, oh, this is working. Hey, this little dream that we had is actually changing kids' lives. We don't have any money yet. We still don't have any money, right? But it's changing kids' lives. And we were seeing kids like not show back up at jail. So the kids that were going back 7 times a year were no longer going back. And that was the moment where I thought, oh, what if we could figure this thing out? Like, what if we could fight and save hundreds of kids from going to jail? So like I told you when I first started, there were 36 to 38 beds, depending on whether they want to throw a mat on the floor or not, in our jail in Faulkner County. And over the last 5 years, Judge Braswell is our juvenile judge here in town. I don't know how you feel about politics. That's not my point here today. But I will tell you this. I have a stupid amount of respect for Judge Braswell. He fights for our juveniles in this city, in this county. I'm talking fights for them. We have cried together and argued, and I'm talking he fights for them. And so with the things that Judge Braswell has implemented and the way that Deliver Hope has been able to provide programs, we've seen a 48% reduction in the number of kids going to our local detention center. And that is why Deliver Hope exists. 48, and so you put that into perspective. A couple weeks ago, we sent one of our girls ministry director went into the jail to visit with the girls that were incarcerated, and she walked in there to go see them. Knocks on the door, and they let her in. They said, "Hey, what are you here for?" And like, "Well, we're here to see the girls in jail." And they're like, "Oh, sorry, there's no girls in jail." I don't know if you guys know what that means, but I've been working at this for 5 years, every week. And it cost our county about $40,000 a year to keep one of those kids in jail. And so you talk about saving money and saving lives. This stuff works. This stuff works. And so when we're pursuing the dreams that you have in your heart, the things that's going to change this city, that's going to change the people around you, like, dude, don't give up. It works. And is it hard? Man, I don't know how many times I tried to quit, Lori. I'd love to, but it works. And so that, I don't know if that answers it. I don't even remember what your question was, but.
That answers it.
Okay.
So and I'll open it up to the audience in a second. Talk about where you are at this juncture
Yeah.
of Deliver Hope.
So we went from, it's been a really fun journey. We've really grown a lot since the beginning of 2017. So just within the last year and, it'll be almost 2 years. We're starting to see some success. God was really doing some really cool things. It was really fun. Beginning of 2017, we had an opportunity to work with another nonprofit that was kind of closing its doors. And we hired a guy that was, if I'm being honest, was brilliant. I don't know another person as smart as him and as life-giving as him and as I got to stop because he's the greatest influence that I've ever met. And so he came to me and said, hey man, I've got this nonprofit that is kind of falling apart, but we've got some assets. And y'all are working really hard and changing a lot of kids' lives, and well, y'all are broke. So what if we started doing work together? I brought those assets to be a part of what y'all were doing, and I just came on your staff and we did it together. And I was like, done, let's get it done, And so we did. And his name was Monty Jones.
You go flat things. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I got to hurry up, So it did not go that quite that easy. It was a little harder than that, but it ended up. My version sounded a lot better, and so we came together, and his name, like I said, his name was Monty Jones, and Monty came on our staff at Deliver Hope as our director of operations, and as soon as he came on staff, I'm talking just blew up. He was brilliant, and I had a vision. And so I would sit down with him and I'd say, hey man, this is what we want to do. And he'd be like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Da, 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 And it just I started working. And so we started putting things into place, and we started hiring people, and we started, we had some money because we acquired them. And so we started doing these pieces, and we were getting people in the community to buy into us because we were seeing some success and people were donating, and it was working. Like all these pieces were starting to come together. And then all of a sudden in July of 2017, last summer, he died. Again, you talk about a major tragedy. He just died of a heart aneurysm and passed away, and you're like, ow, what do? You keep on going. And you keep on doing the exact same thing that you felt called to do before. And so we did. And a lot of it is in honor of him. And so there's a lot of times where I almost quit, and I think, nope, if Monty was here, he'd be pushing me, He'd be saying, come on, Daniel, I need you to keep going on this stuff. And so I just keep fighting for it. And so Monty was like one of those guys that just kept. And so in that process, so 2017, there was a lot of success the early part of the year, and then he passed away in the summer. And then at the end of 2017, it was a lot of revamping of our staff, a lot of processing, hey, what does this look like for us as a team? Are we going to fight for this or not? Should we give up? Should we fight? No, we're going to fight, And so 2017, we've seen the fruition of those things. So what happened it's been a really fun, it's October. I get a call about every, I'll be conservative, I get a call every month from some county in the United States asking us to duplicate our program in their county. And I don't mean this to boast, but this works. And let me tell you what works. Mentoring works. Mentoring works. Investing in the lives of people who need you works. And I jokingly say we're a glorified mentoring program, but it works. And so I get calls all the time from other counties all over the place saying, hey, what will it take for us to duplicate Deliver Hope into our county? And I just go, I don't know. We're making crap up as we go. But now we're starting to get this place where we're starting to learn how this process goes. So the way that we've done it is Pulaski County in Little Rock called us and asked us if we would duplicate our program into Little Rock. County judge. And let me just put it in perspective real quick. I know we're going, okay. All right. So I never would have thought that the lifestyle that I grew up in, that I would be invited to walk into a county government office and be able to go to the top floor and hang out with the county judges, I'm getting escorted by police, but without handcuffs. It was awesome, and they're like bringing food to me. I'm like, yes, sir, and so, but I was in this, so the county, Pulaski County came to us about, I don't know, it's probably 7 or 8 months ago now. And they said, hey, what if we do, what would it take to duplicate Deliver Hope? And I said, man, I don't have the ability to fundraise at that level in Pulaski County. I'll just throw it out for you guys because I don't mind you knowing this because I'm going to ask you to give. But it costs us about $300,000 a year to run Deliver Hope at the capacity that we're running. The majority of our work is staff, but the majority of our work that we do is with kids, and so it costs money to hire staff to work with kids. That's just kind of the way that it works. So it's about $300,000 a year, and so the majority of that is fundraised through me as the executive director, and our staff kind of works with the kids, and so it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of my time to raise that much money. And so when they called and said, hey, would you come to Pulaski County? I'm like, no way, dude. I don't have the effort. I don't have the ability to raise that kind of money. And he said, what if I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is? And I was like, well, that's a whole nother conversation, I'm on my way, So anyways, and so I think here's the thing that we figured out is that what we're doing has not just, actually I'll say, what we're doing has community impact. We're guesstimating, and I can't put this out there, so don't tweet that I said this. But yeah, please. But we're guesstimating that it's in the 4 millions that we've saved Faulkner County in 5 years. Just on juvenile work. So it's worth it to the community. But scratch the community for a second. You're talking about an internal investment of the lives of young people who have never had anybody to speak on their behalf. And watching young people who stand up for the things that they believe in, who make a difference in the communities that they're in. You talk about, you talk about the change that could be made. That $300,000, nothing compared to what could be done in the lives of thousands of young people that we have a chance to work. Deliver Hope touches about 200 kids, 200 to 400 kids a week in the different programs that we're in. There are 400, and I think the last I heard, there were 463 kids on juvenile probation in Faulkner County. It's a game changer. So anyways, all right.
So
sorry.
you're expanding to Little Rock.
So we're expanding to Little Rock. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, they gave us some money, so we are expanding to Little Rock. We hired a staff member, and he's run our Little Rock location right now.
Awesome. Okay, well, sorry guys that
My bad.
No, it's totally fine. But I want to open it for questions, so I'm going to preface by saying if you have to leave at 7, feel free to slip out. I totally forgot to say this at the beginning. Sorry, Jeff. If you're in Jeff's class and you didn't register, sign the sheet at the back, but now we know they stayed the whole time.
Also, let me say real quick, if you need to leave by 7 and you've ever thought about mentoring somebody or giving to Deliver Hope, you can talk to me about giving. But Edison in the back, Edison, raise your hand. This is our mentor director, Edison. He runs all of our mentoring program for our program. So if you've ever thought about just investing in the life of an at-risk teen or a teen in at-risk situations, please holler at him. It'd be a game changer for his life. So
we'll do a few questions. Who wants to kick it off? Jeff.
What's the biggest lesson you learned about leadership?
You would. The greatest lesson I've learned about leadership. I think the thing that I have learned the most about, it's different for me, but it's about empowering other people to do the work. So like when I started Deliver Hope, it was me doing it. I was going into the jail. I was trying to figure out a way to match mentors. When we first met our first teen mom, I tried to start a teen mom ministry. And so I think it was about this, and it was a conversation that you and I had about finding people in our community who would support and be a part of it. So now, the reality is a lot of our teenagers who are part of Deliver Hope don't even know who I am. And so delegation and empowerment to finding other people to invest in the lives of teens makes a larger impact than what I could have made. So I think that's the greatest one. Yeah.
Why don't you explain how religion, how faith-based organization works in a government environment?
So there are programs that we run as a faith-based organization. So the way that I say it all the time, we tell our staff this all the time, is that my job as a Christ follower, and just for those of you who hear this, my job as a Christ follower is not to convince you to believe like me. I do this because I believe like me. So when it comes to government stuff, when it comes to the court, it's easy for me to work with the juvenile court because the court will order kids to attend our programs, but the programs that the court orders our kids to go to, we don't proselytize. We do this because we believe like us, right? So we don't share our faith with them. We run those programs because we want them to know that somebody believes in them. Because of my faith, I believe in them, but I believe in them. And there's there's purpose to their life. There's all this stuff that needs to be happening for them. They're hungry and they're tired and they're lonely and they're scared and they're abused and all these things. So we have to fight for them, right? And then the faith-based pieces is easy because, So the two main areas, I'll explain it this way. Two main areas of our outreach that are like specifically faith-based is we do chapel services, that's what they call it in jail. We do chapel services for kids in jail. We do a guys chapel service, a girls chapel service, and then guys who are charged as adults, right? Murder, rape, those type of things. So we got those 3 chapel services, and then we do a Her Hope program is what we call Her Hope for our teen moms. And those teen moms have the opportunity to hear the gospel, find other people in their community who invest in them, and those type of things. The rest of our program is services that we provide to the court where we meet these kids in their brokenness of situations. But we find the balance between, hey, when a kid is broken and struggling and hurting and they need to find hope, I believe, for what it's worth, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but I believe that true hope is found in Jesus. And so when kids are begging for hope, I tell them. But kids are when kids are court ordered to the programs that we host for the court, we're not allowed to proselytize. And so we found that balance that I think works pretty well.
Daniel, what about going into the schools before those kids get into the system?
Yeah,
Is that is that possible?
Currently, no. I'll say this again. I'll do my best to say this fast. There's this African proverb that we've said around our staff over the last several months. But this African proverb goes like this: that there was these 2 guys and they were out fishing, right? So they're out here fishing, just hanging out, having a good time, and all of a sudden this baby starts floating down the water. Like, why is that baby in the water? Somebody go get that baby out the water. Hey, there's a baby in the water. Go get that baby. And they run out there and go get the baby. And they're like, man, why is this baby in the water? And they look up the stream and they see another baby floating down the water. Like, why is that baby in the water? Go get that baby out of the water. So they run up the stream and go get the baby. Like, why are these babies in the water? They look upstream and there's multiple babies floating down this water. And finally, one of the guys looking at the other guy and says, hey, there's all these babies floating down the water. Look, you keep getting the babies out of the water, but I got to find out who's putting these babies in the water. Somebody's upstream putting these babies in the water. And Deliver Hope is really good at getting babies out of the water. Somebody's putting babies in the water. And we're trying to figure out, for what it's worth, how to stop whoever's putting these babies in the water from putting these babies in the water. Because they're babies. They're babies.
So I have any other. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I have 2 questions. One, I would be shocked if this didn't pull on everyone's heartstrings in the room. So what can we do to help?
I was trying to process that on my way here. So I'll tell you a couple things. I mean, you've heard my heart and you've heard my faith story, all those things. We are always in need of people who invest in the life of a teenager. There are kids in this community who are in desperate need of somebody to let them know they're worth something. And so the first thing I'd tell you is our website's pretty simple. It's deliver-hope.org. I would have deliverhope.org, but some hospital owns it in California. I'm trying to buy it from them. But anyways, deliver-hope.org. And so if you want to become a mentor, man, I'd love, specifically, I'll throw this out here just to be real about it, specifically African-American males. It's a big need for us. Is African-American males, and so if you know people, or that's a need for us. Like I told you, it costs about $300,000 a year to keep doing what we do. And so, man, if you've got a business that's working well, and I'm unashamedly saying, hey, man, partner with us. It's working. It really is, and I think that your money wouldn't go to waste. It would matter. And then on the flip side of that, people that I don't know. And so if your heart's been touched by this and you know the people that I don't know, invite them over to your home and invite me there too, and I'll share this vision with them, and we'll try to change the city of Conway together. So.
Awesome. And last question, we all start our friends with this question. Tell us the best piece of business advice you've heard, or one piece of business advice you want to leave us with tonight.
I knew I was going to forget something to prep for.
Or best that you've learned.
Yeah. I think the thing that I would tell you is that it'll be a sad life for you to fight for yourself. There's a lot of people in our world, and people that you come in contact with every day, who are in desperate need of somebody to let them know that they're worth something. And so I guess I'll tell you this from my 16-year-old voice, I hope you hear it this way. I need you. I need you to tell me that I'm worth something and to let me know that I can make it. And there are people who walk down our streets every day who are going to our high schools, the kids that you run into all the time, who are in desperate need of somebody to look at them in the face, look at them in the eyes, and tell them that they're worth it. And so I think leadership-wise, I would say that my job, and I was telling somebody this the other day, with Deliver Hope even, like my job is not, I don't feel like my job is to create an institution or an organization that works really well. I want to create a movement of people who will fight for kids who are in desperate spots. And so I don't know if that's
Perfect.
helpful, but
Thank you so
That's where I'm
much.
at.
Sorry guys that I totally didn't save enough time for you, and there was, I mean, I had like 40 questions I think I asked you, but I was thinking though as you were talking that there's a saying, show don't tell,
Mm-hmm.
and I kept thinking rather than ask you a bunch of questions, I'll just have you show through your story, so thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing
absolutely,
that with us.
thank you.
Thank you guys for coming. Our next Startup Grind is next month with Brad Lacey. He's the CEO of the Colony Chamber of Commerce, and it'll be at the Chamber of Commerce. It's all on our website, arconductor.org. Thank you for supporting entrepreneurship and Deliver Hope. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.